Hello, and welcome to the Hire Revolution podcast. Our goal is to educate and inspire our HR professionals throughout the United States. I'm your host, Eve Nasby, and we are excited today to have human resources expert Nina Woodard with us on our podcast. Ms. Woodard serves currently as the President and Chief Insights Officer for Nina E. Woodard and Associates, where she helps companies increase their understanding of the cultural nuances influencing businesses in India, and to engage in more meaningful and productive communications with Indian colleagues, all for the purposes of increasing business results. In addition to her consulting practice, Ms. Woodard is a lecturer at Ashford University. She founded her consulting company after a 32-year banking career with 25 years emphasis in human resources management at the executive level. Nina, you must have started when you were 3 because you look fabulous.
Thank you.
She serves as the National Global Expertise Panel member for SHRM and the California State Council of SHRM as part of the Continuity Committee. If that wasn't enough, she's past president of San Diego SHRM, and following her move to Colorado, she's a member of the Colorado Springs SHRM chapter. She also serves as the board chair for Operation Eyesight Universal US. Nina, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you, Eve. I'm really honored to be able to share this podcast with you today.
Well, you have such a depth of experience, and I know our listeners are about to find out all that you've got, or some of what you've got in that wonderful, brilliant mind of yours. And so let's just jump right into this, if you don't mind.
No,
you focus more as a strategist in the human resources realm, and you also help coach other human resources professionals to be more a strategic thinker. So let's dive into that if we could. Why is it important to keep your eye on business strategy as an HR person?
In the role of HR, besides taking care of the people that support the business, we have to make sure that we've aligned them behind how the business makes its money. And also that we have taken into account when we build all the tools that the managers are going to use to manage their employees, that we understand the direction the organization is going. If we don't know the business strategy, if we aren't following along the changes that might be impacting the business strategy, the tools we build might not be appropriate for the way forward for every individual company, because the strategies are very different for each company, even in the same industry, depending on how large they are, their geographical location, those kinds of things. All of those have an impact on the way that the strategy is built for the business. So we can take tools from a best practice, but if we don't adapt it to what's appropriate for our particular business and the strategy that they're following, we could be providing a tool that really isn't going to deliver the result that the organization is looking for. And just another thought on that is that, especially today with all that we've witnessed through the COVID experience and the lockdown and the different phases that we've had to go through with our businesses, if we aren't tracking what the strategy needs to be for the future and thinking about the future direction for our particular company and industry as a whole, but our particular company, then we will not be able to provide the support that's needed for the executives to be able to lead their teams to success, even in 2021. So we must, as HR professionals, understand how the business makes its money and the strategies that underpin that ability to be profitable.
So the opposite of being strategic is being tactical. So what are the dangers of being too tactical as a human resources professional?
You lose sight of the bigger picture. Sometimes you get buried in the administrative functions. And we do have to be good at those as well. I mean, if we don't pay our people on time, if we don't have the right records in place for when performance reviews should be conducted, if we don't do those kinds of appropriate benefit alignments, all of those kinds of open enrollment tools that we have to use to keep our employees on the right track on a personal level as well, then we forget to keep our eye on this strategic ball. Now, there's so much that's available from a technology standpoint now to help us with the administrative kinds of things that we should really be, as HR senior leadership, focusing on what are the technological tools that we could employ rather than hiring more people not to say that we might not hire people, but leverage technology so that the people we do hire can play a much more strategic role.
That's really important. I know a couple of entrepreneurs who have thrown more money at hiring people than taking a step back and seeing how they can maximize the efficiency of the people that they already have. And that also goes with technology. How can you automate certain processes and not just throw a body count at it? How can you become more efficient?
Exactly. Thank you.
Why is it important to create or minimally understand the business case for a business initiative or strategy?
One of the things that I hear from senior leaders about their HR partner is that we don't come prepared to share how this is going to impact the business. We have a lot of the people side of things in our conversation. We understand this is good for people, or this is a good legal, this will help us stay more in compliance. But most of what we do can be bottom line driven as well. And we need to find where that link is between what we're asking management to do and the policies we want them to approve and how it's going to benefit the organization's bottom line. If we can do that and we present that to the CEO and the other C-suite executives that we support, they're not going to fight with us because that's what they want to see. How is this going to impact the bottom line? And if we can start with that story first, this is how this is going to benefit us. And this is why I'm proposing this policy, or why I'm saying that we should spend our money, just as an example today, looking at how we could keep all of our employees working from home rather than come back to work in an office building. So that kind of initiative, if we have a business case that can show them how that is going to help build a stronger bottom line, it's a much more compelling conversation for them. And immediately they understand the direction, and so they're a lot less resistant to the things that we would propose. And that shows them that we're thinking strategically and we understand the business because we know how this is going to impact the bottom line.
Yes. How would you go about, I want a follow-up question on that. How would you go about coaching a human resources professional to even start laying that plan out? How are they doing the research? What exactly are you suggesting that they do and present?
So this can be very interesting, and it can be time consuming, which I think is maybe part of the reason that we don't do it. But building a business case involves us really understanding the dynamics of whatever the policy is that we're presenting, or whatever program we'd like to have the organization adopt and take on board. And we have to think through to the end of it. We have to see what's the result and where do we want this program to go? And then what does that look like when we get to the end? So the big issue for us is not to just say that we want to comply with this law because it's the new regulation, but how is this ruling going to impact us? What does it mean to who we are as a company, to our value set, and how will compliance help us either be more financially successful or at least support our continued financial success? And once we can identify that link, then we can build a business case, which is, why do we want to do this? With including not just because the law says so, but including how this is going to benefit our company, which again takes us back to a place where the senior leadership looks at what we recommended and says, they really understand the business. This is going to be good for us.
Which leads me to the next question, Nina. With whom does HR need to maintain a relationship to be able to be strategic?
Well, of course, the CEO. So you want to do your relationship building at the top level, and make sure that you have their confidence in your ability to be able to deliver. So working on that and making sure that you're seen as a credible resource for them. And sometimes when I was able to operate at a very high level in an organization next to the CEO, you might be the only person they can talk to in the organization. And it's lonely at the top. and they need to be able to trust you. So if you have the right kind of reputation with them, you can be a very valuable resource to the CEO, which is also a valuable resource for you because you get to see how they think and what's important to them in the business, and actually listen to their sharing of experience that helps you then be more well-rounded in your own thought process. The other person that you really need to know, if you don't already and you're an HR professional, is your CFO. And you want to go in and sit down with them and ask them as many questions as you need to ask them about the organization to completely understand the profit and loss, the annual statement, all of those number things that are not high usually on the HR priority list, but are extremely important to the business. And if you, just as an example, for me, I have always tried to build a relationship with a chief financial officer, and we were changing our benefit administration plan. And I went in to tell him what we were going to do. And he gave me such a great way to set up the accounting tool for it. And that it actually saved the company money because he was able to advise me on a way to set it up in our general ledger system to be able to make it work profitably for us. If I didn't have that relationship with him and I just went off and did what the brokers were telling me to do by way of setting it up, we might have missed that opportunity. So the CFO can be a very valuable ally. And in most cases, I have found that when I go in and ask them, tell them, I really want to know as much as you can and are willing to share with me about your business. Let's go to lunch, or can we have a conversation? I know your time is really valuable, but can you give me half an hour, a couple of days this week so that we can, I can kind of pick your brain on what's important and how I can really help HR be a part of the process of making the company financially successful. They almost never say no when you approach them like that, and they're very happy to share with you, and they can be your best partner. When a lot of times, because they're so budget conscious, we don't approach them and we end up getting things cut from the budget that might not be the most appropriate way to deal with the future of the organization. Does that make sense?
It does, and I love the fact that you talk about developing relationships. I know a senior human resources professional who is the only confidant that her CEO has, and she is not afraid to get him in a room and shut the door and say, what do you think you just said to the entire company? She is his confidant and she's his sounding board, and she keeps him accountable.
You have to be that partner. And if you have developed a really strong relationship and are credible in what you do across the board in HR, you will have their attention and you are much better able to manage the whole HR component of the business.
I think you want to be, you want to be heard, want to be understood. You seek to understand before you want to be understood, right? So you're asking for that relationship with that person to understand who he or she is from the inside out. And then you earn the right to take your requests to them for whatever it is that you need. And you're really positioning yourself as a true business partner in that scenario.
Absolutely. And that's the bottom line.
What aspects, Nina, of HR are important to review against this strategic plan?
I believe everything that we do needs to be reviewed against a strategic plan. So when I say everything, it's the tools we use for hiring, it's the way our job descriptions are written, it's the way we're paying our people, it's our compensation philosophy, it's the total compensation package, it's the PTO process. How do we grant vacation? How do we decide who gets vacation when? All of those tools that we use to administer, do they fit the strategy of where we're trying to take the organization? Or were they, are they inherited from previous strategies? And are they still as beneficial as they should be? So technically, you might not have to change everything every year, but you at least need to do an audit and check it against the new strategy to see if does this have the right tone? Does this have the right engagement tool with it? Does this have the right attitude for the managers to share with the employees in terms of the way we feel about them being a part of our way forward? And if you do that, you're more likely to have buy-in from all of the management team than you are to say, well, you know, here's this HR program and we need you to do it this way because this is how we do it, right? I'll just share an example that I think was long overdue, and that's the whole performance evaluation process. If, you know, 5 years ago, HR had been listening to business heads who said, I hate this performance review strategy. This form is useless. It's not doing what I need it to do. And if we listened to the employees who were saying, this check the box thing is not doing anything for me anymore, and I don't like the way the performance review systems are working, we would have changed them long before we did. But it took an article in Harvard Business Review to say, you know, let's throw out HR before we opened our eyes and said, oh, they don't like this tool, right? So it's because that tool didn't meet the business need. It wasn't delivering any result that was appropriate or aligned with the strategy of the business. So if we can take a minute to audit what we're doing and look at, yes, this aligns, or no, I need to change this, or I need to rewrite this in a different tone and attitude, because we don't want to sound like the police. We want to sound more like we're associates and like we're engaging them in a process of success going forward, then we are much more likely to have acceptance across the board of the things that we present.
So auditing is important. How often should HR audit their department activities, policies, programs, and tools?
Well, whenever the business strategy changes, you should try to do it as soon as possible at that point in time. So I'll share another little scenario from my background with you, if it's okay, a little story. Please. So I was sitting in a business meeting with our international business leadership. They were talking about growing their business, and they had two options for growing, organic and inorganic. And at that point in time, our business was managed centrally from Miami, and we had 6 country heads in 6 different countries in South America. And there was no policy consideration. Everything was managed individually. And as I was listening to them talk and the way they wanted to go forward, I realized that if they really were going to do this and to leverage the talent that they had sitting in Miami, they were going to need to have some policy and procedure that wasn't in place for the Latin American business. And the American businesses and policies that we had for relocation, et cetera, might have some benefit, but not because we were looking at short-term sort of overseas assignments, if you will, even though it was in the Americas. We needed to have a different set of policies for them. And so I sat with the business head and I said, how do you plan to move people from Miami into, let's say, Venezuela, if that's where we're going to buy somebody? And he said, well, I hadn't really thought of that. And I said, well, who do you think is the most talented person on staff to be able to, to lead this? And he gave me the name of one of the vice presidents. And I said, so is he just going to commute from Miami to Venezuela? I mean, he's got a family and kids and all of these things. How are we going to handle this? So he said, I hadn't really thought of it. Help me. So I did. I went out and I figured out, well, we need to look at combining the country managers. We need a philosophy for South American management across the different entities in South America. Even though they're all different countries, a lot of the policies could be the same from country to country. We need to uniform the benefits so we can offer country transfers between the South American countries if we have talent in one place that we need to move somewhere else, so they don't necessarily have to lose their benefits or go on an expat package, which might be more expensive for intra-country, intra-South American moves. So we had to look at all of those things, and they gave me a budget and let me go to town on it and develop all those policies. So looking at their business initiative that changed from just being Miami and driving 5 different country entities to helping them actually put an infrastructure in place to either organically or inorganically grow the business required a complete redo of all the things that we were doing and had done in Latin America. And it was a turn on the dime kind of a scenario because they were ready to roll, right? They wanted to move now, not next month, right?
Right. and you combined the strategic and the tactical all in one conversation and demonstrated a true 360 value to that organization and that leadership.
And I'm particularly proud of that story, and I like to tell it because when they had the rewards for the activity that we did, because we did do an acquisition, I got rewarded just like all the other managers with a bonus, the same as the other business managers on the team did. So I felt really proud. I felt really proud of HR and our contribution.
So Nina, please help us understand what the SHRM competency model is and how it can help a human resources professional stay strategic.
So in their wisdom, over the period of time that SHRM was looking at ways to help the profession evolve to be on a higher level across organizations and to be seen as an important tool for all leadership across organizations in every industry, they started out by first developing the certification program, which was pretty much legally based in terms of understanding the knowledge that it takes to be an HR professional. Mm-hmm. So there was some of the theory behind HR and a lot of the laws that govern what we do and how we do it, and the importance of being in compliance with all of those laws. But over time, they realized that it's not enough to just know the business if you want to be a real partner with senior leadership. And so they began across the globe actually interviewing senior HR professionals and CEOs to see what is it that HR people do who are successful and who are good business partners. And after years of conversations and interviewing many CEOs and HR professionals, they came up with a competency model that's built on a framework of knowledge about the profession itself, you know, the things that impact the workplace, the things that are important from a people understanding, and the legal aspects of things that we need to do. But also, what are the competencies that we need to be able to exhibit to be effective at getting our message heard and understood. So it includes things like communication skill, ethical behavior, business acumen, leadership and navigation. So that one, that's one of my favorite ones, and I shouldn't be dithering over it, because that's the one where you actually understand who do you need to talk to get things done in the organization, and how do you navigate through the leadership structure in any particular business that you might be working with, either as a professional inside the organization or a consultant externally. Who are the key players that you need to establish those relationships with? Talks about relationship building as well. So on the framework and foundation of textbook learning, what are the competencies you need to exhibit? And that's now what their new certification is all about, and designed specifically to help HR professionals pick their head up from their desktop and look at the broader strategic perspective of the business and understand that it's your persona that you sell that sells the ideas behind HR. So if you can connect effectively, if you can understand the business effectively, if you can present yourself with confidence when you need to, and in the way that's important for the business to be successful, keeping ethics in, high on your list of important issues to address, you will be heard and understood, again, much more effectively than if you're seen more as a tactical player and don't understand the connection between your person and the way you're perceived as a professional.
And you've spent decades with SHRM. You understand that value that they bring to the table. And I think not only in the materials that they have and their website, but truly it's in the brotherhood and the sisterhood, the camaraderie, sharing best practices among the SHRM members that I think brings a lot of value to the table. Would you agree with that?
I do completely. And even when I went so I've lived in Los Angeles, I've lived in San Diego, I've lived in New York City, and in each of those locations where I lived in the US, I joined the SHRM chapter right away, because when I got there, I didn't know that I didn't have a network of colleagues in New York, for example, when I moved from LA, or a network of colleagues when I came back from India and landed in San Diego. But by joining the chapter pretty quickly and associating with those HR professionals in the chapter, pretty quickly you can build your network of who, what, where, when, who do I need to know in terms of resources to be able to practice effectively in this community. And it also helps build credibility because other people begin to recognize what value you can add. And if you use it as a leadership, if you become a leader and use it as a leadership development tool for yourself as well, it also gives you that confidence in your ability to lead in different environments.
So in addition to the SHRM tools, what other tools do you recommend for human resources professionals to use so they can continue to contribute to the organizational strategy?
I was late to college because at a point in my career, I realized that it wasn't going to be people that knew me personally that were making decisions about whether or not I got appointed to this or that particular role, because we were acquired by an international bank. And when we were, the decisions about my performance were being made by somebody in Great Britain who had never met me before in my life. And I realized at that point that even though I had a really great resume for all the work that I'd done, and I'd attended a lot of HR programs through ABA, which was the American Bankers Association, and I'd even gone to a graduate school at Princeton one summer that was hosted by an HR group. And all of those were great, but they weren't a degree. And I realized that if at some point on somebody's radar, a degree was going to be a deal breaker for whether I could be considered for a job or not, that I had to go to college. So I did, and I got my bachelor's degree. And it was really an amazing experience, because even though I had practically experienced most of what I had learned, and my counselor said he'd never spoken to anybody who had all the senior programs done but needed all the 101 stuff, because I didn't have the freshman and sophomore curriculum under my belt. It was really an enriching experience for me to actually understand this theory, that theory, this is why this happens this way. So I really do advise all professionals to continue their education as far as they're able to do that in HR, even up through the master's level education with a focus in HR, because in those programs, you get to associate with others who have the same passion that you do for the business, but also you learn the educational aspects and the theories that really drive some of the behaviors that you will experience once you're out there as a professional. And it's sort of the missing link between what you're experiencing and how you can influence the way those things might move in a different direction that you wouldn't have if you didn't have the education. In addition to that, whatever industry you're in, you should be following your industry journals and reading them about the trends and the things that are happening in that industry, and also management journals for the same reason, because if you have the inside track and you can go back to your leadership and say, did you know that this new software is coming up, or that these people are recommending this thing or that thing, and it's very similar to this product that we have, and is that going to hurt our marketplace? Right away, your people are going like, oh my goodness, this is a really valuable piece of information. And you become that much higher in their thought process in terms of respecting the things that you bring to the table and the value you add. They're not always telling you, well, we have to do this because. You can say to them, we might need to be thinking about this kind of training for our people if this is the direction that the industry is going in. And if it's going to be 5 years and we need to be fully functional in 5 years, we better start planning the training process now, or we won't be ready for it then, right? So it gives you that kind of opportunity to be strategic and to think about the long term and not just the short term and meeting just those quarterly goals, but how are we going to continue to be successful into the future?
We have talked about so much, Nina, strategy, and every human resources professional, I hope, will listen to this podcast, because the information is for today and is to make them a better human resources professional. It's helped to get them a seat at the big table and contribute to the organization, and not like you said, not to just be the enforcer of rules, but really to help drive the direction of the organization, which I think every human resources professional needs to be doing. So the last question we have for the day is, what are the benefits to the HR professional and to the organization if HR is strategic?
So to the professional, it's a career that can sustain you for your whole life as long as you want to continue to be an HR professional, or even morph yourself into a professor or a consultant or both, depending on how your career moves you and the things that happen in your life that you need to be able to respond to on an individual basis. Because you understand business, you can make that transition to either one of those two occupations that are closely related, and certainly allow you the opportunity on an individual basis to influence thought leaders of the future in HR, and to help organizations that may not have a full HR team be able to operate effectively. And if you want to have a 35-year HR career and you're solid in the corporate world, you will always be valuable as long as you stay strategic and can have the relationship with the CEO that is something that they will look for and depend on from you. The organization itself will find that it is operating at a very high performance level, and that they have from their HR team the support that's needed to actually be a high performance organization and lead, again, sustainably into a future that will keep them alive as long as they want to be in business.
Nina Woodard, Chief Insights Officer for Nina Woodard and Associates, thank you for being a part of our podcast. Can you please tell our listeners how they can get a hold of you if they need more information or additional assistance from you?
Sure, thank you for asking. I have a website that's my name. It's ninaewoodard.com. And you can find all my contact information there, and you can contact me through that. I'm also on LinkedIn, Nina Elizabeth Woodard. And of course, I'm on Facebook too. I do use Facebook mostly for family, but I have a few friends there as well, and business associates there as well. So I would relish any of you reaching out if you have more questions, either to me through LinkedIn or through my website, and my email ID is nina@ninaewoodard.com. It can't get much easier than that.
No, it can't, Nina. And thank you for being a part of our show today. We really appreciate you and your time.
Thank you. You're very welcome. And I'm honored to have been a part.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to our podcast. Like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Hire Revolution. I'm your host, Eve Nasby, and we'll see you next time on The Hire Revolution.